The smell of gasoline woke me before I heard the crash. I stumbled onto the porch and saw the delivery truck jackknifed into our garage, flames already licking up toward the propane tank. "Everybody out! Now!" Instead of running toward me, my son screamed, "The truck! Get the trailer hitched to the truck!" Then my daughter-in-law shouted from the driveway, "Forget the shed. Grab the safe deposit box first." My bad hip buckled as I came down the porch steps too fast, and I went down hard on the gravel. My ankle twisted underneath me. I lay there listening to their footsteps moving away, toward the garage, toward the truck, toward everything that wasn't me. And what I heard my son say next is something I will carry to my grave. Thank you for spending this time with me, friend. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I read every one of them. A few details in this story have been changed to protect the people in it, but the heart of it is true, and I think you'll understand why I needed to tell it. My name is Walter Pruitt, and I was 68 years old the night my own garage nearly killed me. I want to tell you it happened fast, the way these things do in movies, but that's not how I remember it. I remember it slow, the way a bad dream stretches out just to make sure you feel every second of it. It was a Tuesday in late October, cold enough in Ohio that I'd already put the storm windows up. I'd gone to bed early because my hip had been acting up all week, the kind of ache that settles into the bone before a front moves through. I was somewhere between asleep and not when I heard the sound, metal folding into metal, glass breaking, something enormous coming to a stop too close to my house. Then, the smell, gasoline, sharp and wrong, followed almost immediately by smoke. I got up faster than a man my age has any business getting up. My late wife, Carol, used to say I moved like a filing cabinet when I first woke up, all stiff joints and bad angles. But that night my body found speed I didn't know it still had. I hit the hallway and saw orange light pulsing through the window at the end of it, painting the walls the color of a sunset that had gone wrong somehow. "Randall!" I shouted for my son. "Denise!" for his wife. They were staying with me that fall had been for 4 months, ever since Randall's construction business hit a rough patch, and they'd asked to move into the downstairs guest room just until things turn around. I hadn't minded. A house feels different with people in it, even when those people spend most evenings on their phones instead of talking to you. I got to the front door and pulled it open, and that's when I saw it in full. A delivery truck must have lost control on the ice patch at the bottom of the hill, had plowed straight through the side of my detached garage, where the fuel tank for the generator sat, and where Randall kept an old work trailer loaded with his tools. The whole structure was lit up like a bonfire, flames already reaching for the eaves, black smoke rolling up into the October sky. Denise was standing in the driveway in her robe, and for 1/2 second my chest loosened, because I thought, thank God, they're already outside, they're safe. Then I heard her voice, sharp and panicked, but not for me. "The truck! Randall! We have to move the truck before the propane goes!" And Randall's voice came right back at her, from somewhere near the garage, hoarse with smoke. "I'm trying. Go get the strongbox from the closet. The deed's in there, and Dad's coin collection, go." I stood on my own porch, 68 years old, watching flames climb toward a propane tank that could turn my entire property into a crater, and neither one of them had said my name. "We have to get out of here," I called out, my voice cracking with smoke I hadn't even breathed in yet, just from shouting. "Forget the truck. Forget the box. Just get away from the garage." Nobody answered me. I heard the truck's transmission engage, tires spinning on gravel, Randall cursing under his breath as he tried to back it clear of the flames. I started down the porch steps to go help, or to go make them listen. I'm honestly not sure which, and my bad ankle rolled on the second step. I went down hard, my hip taking the brunt of it, a white-hot pain shooting up through my leg that told me something had torn or cracked. I wouldn't know which until later. I tried to get up. I couldn't. The ground was cold and wet with dew, and above me the sky had turned the color of a wound, and I lay there listening to my son's truck engine and my daughter-in-law's footsteps running back into a burning building for a strongbox. "Randall," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Randall, I'm down. I need help." I don't know if he heard me. I've turned that question over more nights than I can count, and I still don't have an answer I like. What I do know is that the propane tank went up 11 minutes later, according to the fire report, with a sound like the sky tearing open, and by then I had crawled maybe 15 feet across the frozen grass, dragging a leg that would not obey me, toward the road, toward anyone. That's when I heard the second explosion, smaller, from inside the garage, probably a paint can or a fuel canister, and I heard Denise scream, and I heard the truck peel out down the driveway with a spray of gravel, and for one terrible moment, I thought they'd left me there entirely, driven off into the night with the strongbox and the truck, and left an old man crawling across his own frozen lawn. They hadn't left the property. I want to be fair about that, because fairness is something I've had to work very hard to hold on to since that night. They'd pulled the truck to the far end of the driveway, out of range of the tank, and they were standing there together when the fire department finally arrived, Denise clutching the strongbox to her chest like a baby, Randall with soot on his face and his phone already out, filming the garage for what I later learned was an insurance claim. Nobody was looking at the lawn. Nobody was looking for me. It was a stranger who found me, a young man named Miguel Ortiz, driving home late from a second shift at the hospital where he worked as an orderly, who saw the flames from the road and pulled over before the first fire truck even arrived. He came up the driveway at a dead run, saw me on the ground, and I remember the exact words he said, because they were the first kind words anyone had said to me in 11 very long minutes. "Sir, I've got you. Don't try to move. I've got you." He knelt down beside me in the frozen grass, still in his hospital scrubs, and I looked up at his face, young, maybe 26, dark eyes steady in a way that made the panic in my chest ease just slightly, and I told him my name because he asked, gently, the way you'd ask a scared child, not because he needed it for any form. "Walter," I said. "Walter Pruitt." "Okay, Walter, I'm Miguel. I work up at St. Vincent's. I know a thing or two about a bad leg, so I need you to hold still for me, all right? Ambulance is coming." He got his jacket off and folded it under my head, and he stayed there, one hand on my shoulder, steady as a fence post, while the sirens got louder and the garage burned itself down to its bones 50 yards away. I remember looking past him at the fire, at Randall on his phone, at Denise still holding that strongbox, and thinking with a clarity that the pain hadn't managed to burn out of me. They went back for a box of paperwork and a truck full of tools, and a stranger is the one holding my head off the ground. The ambulance took me to St. Vincent's, the same hospital where Miguel worked, and it was there, in the waiting room outside the ER, still in his scrubs because his shift had technically ended 2 hours earlier, that he waited to make sure someone signed the paperwork on my behalf. Because when the intake nurse asked if there was family to call, I said the same 4 words I'd say more times than I care to count over the next several months. "There's no one to call." That wasn't strictly true. Randall was 30 minutes away dealing with the fire marshal, but something in me, lying on that gurney with a fractured hip and a dislocated ankle and a memory of running footsteps moving away from me instead of toward me, could not make myself say his name. Miguel heard me say it anyway. I saw something shift in his face, the same tightening around the eyes I would come to recognize over the following weeks as the particular expression of a good man deciding, quietly, to take on a burden that wasn't his to carry. "I'll check on you," he said, before they wheeled me back. I mean it. I didn't believe him. I want to be honest about that. I'd known plenty of people in my 68 years who said, "I'll check on you," the way you'd say, "Have a nice day," a pleasant sound with no weight behind it. I closed my eyes as they wheeled me toward surgery, and I thought about my wife, Carol, gone 6 years now to a stroke that took her in her sleep, and I thought, not for the first time, that I understood now what it might have felt like for her, in those last seconds, to be entirely alone with something enormous happening to her body. I was wrong about Miguel, as it turned out. I was wrong about a great many things that fall, and I am grateful, now, for every single one of them. He came back the next morning before his shift, still in street clothes, with 2 coffees, one of which he set on my tray table without asking whether I drank coffee. "Figured a man who survives a garage fire in October has earned a coffee," he said. And something about the plainness of it, the lack of performance in it, made my throat go tight in a way 3 months of physical therapy never quite managed. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Not every visit was long. Sometimes it was 10 minutes before a shift. Sometimes it was him sitting in the corner chair doing homework, because it turned out Miguel was 2 years into nursing school, working the hospital job to pay for it, taking classes at the community college 3 nights a week. I asked him once why he kept coming, and he shrugged in the particular way young men shrug when they don't want to make a moment bigger than they think it deserves to be. You were alone on a lawn while your family looked for paperwork, he said. That's not a thing I can unknow, Mr. Pruitt. It was during the second week, when I was well enough to have real conversations, instead of medicated fragments of them, that I met his mother, Rosa, and his younger sister, Anna, who was 9 years old and had the kind of unfiltered directness that only 9-year-olds and very old men seem to possess anymore. She came in on a Saturday afternoon in a purple coat, 2 sizes too big, carrying a shoebox that rattled when she set it on my tray table. "This is for you," she announced. I looked at the shoebox, then at her. "Anna, honey, I can't take your things. They're not my things anymore, I already decided," she said, with the ironclad certainty of someone daring me to argue. "It's my bottle cap collection. I have 412. I counted them twice." She lifted the lid to show me rows of bottle caps sorted by color, an entire small universe organized with obsessive, loving precision. "You don't have anything in your room. Mama says that's sad. So now you have this." I felt something behind my eyes that I refused, for the third time that week, to let become anything more than pressure. "Why bottle caps?" She shrugged one shoulder, exactly the way her brother did. "Because they're the best thing I have. You're supposed to give the best thing you have. That's the rule." "Whose rule is that?" "Mine," she said, as if this settled the matter entirely, and picked up the remote to find cartoons. The conversation apparently concluded to her satisfaction. I kept that shoebox on the windowsill of my hospital room for the rest of my stay, and later, on the dresser of the small apartment, I eventually rented 2 blocks from Rosa's house, because by then I had made a decision I hadn't fully admitted to myself yet, that I was not going home. Not to that house, not to that garage, not to the 2 people who had run toward a truck and a strongbox instead of toward me. Rosa Ortiz was a widow herself. Her husband gone 9 years to a workplace accident at the plant where he'd been a foreman, and she worked 2 jobs, mornings cleaning offices downtown, evenings at a laundromat she half-owned with her sister, to keep Miguel in nursing school and Anna in the Catholic school, 2 streets over. She had absolutely no reason in the world to adopt a stranded old white man into her family's orbit, and she did it anyway, the way her son had, without ceremony, simply because the need was in front of her, and she had never in her life learned how to walk past a need she was capable of filling. It was Rosa who noticed things about me that I hadn't told anyone. It was late November, 6 weeks into my recovery, when she was helping me organize the small stack of belongings that had survived the fire, a few photographs Randall's insurance adjuster had salvaged from a fireproof box in the house, and she went very still over one particular photograph. "Who is this?" she asked, holding up a faded picture of a young girl in a blue dress, maybe 6 years old, laughing at something outside the frame. My chest did something complicated. "That's Josephine, my daughter, my first daughter, before Randall." Rosa's face had gone carefully, deliberately neutral, the way a person's face goes when they're holding something back to see if you'll say more first. "What happened to her?" I hadn't told this story out loud in almost 30 years. Carol and I had stopped telling it to each other, even sometime in the late 90s, because there's only so many times 2 people can say the same unbearable thing to each other before the saying of it becomes its own kind of wound. "We lost her," I said, "at a county fair outside Dayton, 1996. She was 6 years old. I turned around to pay for a funnel cake, and when I turned back, she was gone. We looked for 11 years, hired investigators, put up flyers until the ink faded on the old ones, and we had to print new. Carol never really came back from it. Neither did I, if I'm being honest with you." Rosa didn't say anything right away. She set the photograph down very carefully on the table, the way you set down something you're afraid might be more fragile than it looks. "What was her birthmark?" she said. It wasn't quite a question. The floor of the room seemed to tilt very slightly. "How did you know she had a birthmark?" "I didn't," Rosa said, and her voice had changed entirely, gone thin and careful. "I'm asking because Miguel has one, on his collarbone, shaped almost like a little half-moon. He's had it since we adopted him." I sat very still. Adopted him. 24 years ago. Rosa said slowly, watching my face with an intensity I will remember until the day I die. He was 5. The agency told us almost nothing, a county placement. Found by himself outside a rest stop off I-70. No identification. Wouldn't speak for almost 3 months. We named him Miguel because it was my father's name and because the boy needed something. He never remembered anything before us. Nothing. Not one thing. I-70, I said. My voice had gone somewhere very far away from my own body. Josephine went missing at a fair in Dayton, right off I-70. Rosa's hand went to her mouth. I want to tell you the rest of that conversation unfolded gracefully, the way it might in a story someone tells well. It did not. I asked her to bring me every document the adoption agency had ever given her, which took 2 more weeks and considerable pleading with a records office that did not want to reopen a 24-year-old file. Miguel, when we finally sat him down together in Rosa's kitchen in December, went very quiet in a way that frightened me, staring at the old photograph of Josephine in the blue dress for what felt like a very long time before he said anything at all. I don't remember a fair, he said finally. I don't remember much before I was 5. I used to have a dream about a man's hand and losing it in a crowd. I thought I made it up. You didn't make it up, I said, and my voice broke apart on the last word, and I did not try to put it back together. We did the DNA test in January, because Rosa insisted, gently but immovably, that certainty mattered more than any story we might want to believe. 6 weeks later, on a gray Tuesday afternoon in Rosa's kitchen with Anna doing homework at the table, like the moment wasn't rearranging the entire architecture of all our lives, I opened the email on my phone with hands that would not stay still, and I read the number at the top of the page, and I understood, with a clarity that no fire and no fall had managed to give me, that I had found my daughter. Not my daughter. My son, now, in every way that mattered, a 29-year-old nursing student who had somehow, impossibly, spent a rainy October night pulling a stranger off a frozen lawn without knowing that stranger was the father who had spent 11 years and every spare dollar looking for him. Miguel did not say much that afternoon. He sat with his head in his hands for a long time, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were red, and he said the only thing that made any sense to say. You were alone on that lawn, he said, and I still didn't know. You knew enough, I told him. You knew enough to stop. I want to tell you what happened after, because this is the part I think matters most, the part I hope you're still here for. I did not go back to Randall and Denise right away. I let the winter pass. I let Miguel finish his semester, and I watched Anna grow 2 inches and lose a tooth and add another 40-some bottle caps to a collection I now understood, with a lump in my throat every single time, as the exact currency of a family that gives freely because it has never known any other way to be a family. I moved my remaining savings, quietly, into a trust because I had built a modest but stable manufacturing supply business over 31 years, Pruitt Fasteners, and Randall had been managing the day-to-day operations for the past 3 years while I stepped back, and I had never gotten around to updating who held legal signing authority if something happened to me. I found out, when I finally asked my attorney to pull the paperwork in February, that Randall had quietly filed to have me declared incapacitated the previous December 6 weeks after the fire, while I was still in a rehabilitation facility, on the grounds that my injuries and, he claimed, early signs of cognitive decline made me unfit to manage the company. I had never shown a single sign of cognitive decline in my life. What I had shown, apparently, was the poor judgment to survive a fire my son had not stayed to help me out of. The hearing to reverse that filing happened in March, in a modest courtroom that could not have been further from the ballroom I imagine some of you might expect after everything else. I did not need a ballroom. I needed a judge, 3 medical evaluations that confirmed I was of entirely sound mind, and a stack of documents showing that Randall had, in the 4 months since the fire, transferred 2 company vehicles into his own name and begun negotiating the sale of a warehouse property that belonged to the business, not to him. Randall did not look at me once during that hearing. Denise sat 2 rows back, and when the judge read her ruling restoring full authority to me, voiding the incapacity filing, and referring the vehicle transfers to the company's accountant for review, I watched her face do something I recognized from a lifetime of watching people's faces, the particular collapse of someone who has just understood that the story they told themselves about their own righteousness will not survive contact with a courtroom. I did not send Randall to prison. I want to be honest that some part of me considered it in the darker hours of that winter and decided against it, not entirely out of forgiveness, but because Carol would not have wanted that, and because some accounts are better settled in ways that don't require another family, however broken, to lose a father to a cell. What I did instead was simpler and, I think, more lasting. I removed him from any operational role at Pruitt Fasteners. I kept him on the payroll in a reduced capacity, because 31 years of building something teaches you that cruelty rarely improves on justice. But I made Miguel once he'd finished his nursing degree that spring, which he did, with honors. Anna, in the front row of the ceremony, in a dress she'd picked out herself, and insisted was extremely fancy, a full partner in the company's charitable foundation, which I established that same year and named, after some debate, simply the Rosa Fund, for a woman who had never asked for a single thing from me and had given me back a son. The first grant from that fund covered 4 years of Anna's Catholic school tuition, paid in full, because I had learned by then that some debts are not meant to be repaid so much as passed forward. She cried when we told her, which surprised all of us, because Ana Ortiz did not, as a rule, cry over things. "I thought you'd think it was too much," she said. "Ana," I told her, "you gave me every bottle cap you owned because you decided I needed them more than you did. There is no such thing as too much when it comes to you." I moved out of the little apartment 2 blocks from Rosa's that spring and bought a house 3 streets further down, close enough to walk to Sunday dinner, which became a fixed appointment in all our calendars, the way church used to be for Carol and me decades ago, before life got complicated. I sit on Rosa's back porch, some evenings now, and Miguel, who works the night shift at St. Vincent's still, 3 years into his RN license, steady and unshowy in the way he has always been about everything that matters, sits with me sometimes when he's not on shift, and neither of us says very much, because we've learned that the silence between people who trust each other doesn't need filling. I think about that night in the frozen grass more than I'd like to admit. I think about the sound of my son's truck peeling out of the driveway, and the strongbox held against Denise's chest like something precious, and I think about Miguel's hands, steady as a fence post, and Anna's shoebox of 412 bottle caps, and I understand now something I did not understand at 68 years old, lying on that lawn believing I might be dying alone. Family was never the thing I thought it was for most of my life. I believed, the way most of us are taught to believe, that blood was the whole of it, that the people who share your name are owed your loyalty simply by the fact of sharing it. I was wrong about that, and it cost me something to learn how wrong, though I no longer think of what it cost as a loss. What I learned instead is that family is a thing people build, choice by small choice, in the moments nobody is watching and nobody is filming for an insurance claim. A young man who stops his car for a stranger, a little girl who hands over the best thing she owns because she believes that's simply what you do, a widow who asks a careful question about a birthmark because she has spent her whole life paying close attention to the people in front of her. If you are watching this tonight and you have people in your life who run toward you when things catch fire, instead of past, you hold on to that. Tell them what it means. Don't wait, the way I nearly did, until you're the one lying in the frozen grass to understand exactly who was worth trusting all along. If this story found something in you tonight, I hope you'll leave me a word in the comments and tell me what it was. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if stories like this one matter to you, stay with me, there will be another. Thank you for staying until the very last word with me tonight, friend. These stories don't really end. They just become the beginning of somebody else's.